how things that seem to be so necessary for the body and all these activities and all this, you start to see that as really a distraction, and you start to hone in on the homing beacon, so to speak, then it just is a glorious ride. It's a glorious life because that's part of why we're here. Is it's really quite a spectacular life. Because when you don't put your energy in thinking about a lot of things that seem to be about the body and time and protecting and maintaining, a lot of energy goes into that. When you free your mind up from that and you just turn your mind in another direction from all that, then you have an amazing amount of energy, and an amazing, you might just say, you're so open and receptive to miracles coming in you and through you that your life takes on miraculous qualities. And really, that's what we loved about the fairy tales. We enjoy watching characters in fairy tales that kind of have a magical, mystical, carefree life in which there's joy and glee and excitement, and there's a sense of the adventure in it. It's not like the world, the linear world of human beings is very much about problem solving. And so much energy is put into problem solving. And we might say that from a Course in Miracles perspective, it's really trying to solve problems in a horizontal way, and really it's not going to actually solve the problem. It's almost like the world was a setup to have so many problems and so much energy spent in trying to solve the problems inappropriately, like in form, that eventually it gets very depressing and very tiring. Jesus says the world is very tired, and that is a good description for the linear world, because you put all this energy in and nothing seems to come of it. Just more problems arise. You get another set every day, and then another set, and then another set. And then at some point there has to be something that rises up in your soul. It just says there has to be more than this. I can't really get accustomed to this. I can't really think that this is how it's meant to be. That's how Bill Thetford and Helen Schuckman joined together. Bill was the head of the department, and Helen worked in that department, and they just came together, and he just was expressing his frustrations one day, and he just said, there has to be another way. And he was quite surprised when she said, you're right, Bill, and I'll help you find it. There's the collaboration in mind, there's the joining in that. I find that people, like with Francis and I, how we were brought together, and there's so many people that I've been brought together in their lives. A few days ago we went to see a new movie that just came out. It's called Begin Again. I really enjoyed it. It was, what's her name? Mark Ruffalo and Keira Knightley were in it. But it was a beautiful movie of going past horizontal love to much more of a divine love. There was huge collaborations, there was such transparency, such an authenticity, and I just had people that I've known and lived with for many years, and that we were, about 20 of us in this movie theater watching this movie together, and then the movie ends, the credits roll, and there we all are, as the whole theater empties out, we're just there. We were just laughing before the movie started, and then just was kind of a buzz of energy, but it's just coming together in that same purpose, and that is the purpose of your life, and then watching this new way unfold. It's not really a spatial thing, it's not like living in community in a spatial way, like Jane Marie and Peter are out, and every day is a new day of discovery. I'm just giving their business card. What was the top of the business card?
On the road.
On the road. Unplugged.
Yeah, come what may.
Come what may. And then the picture of the road on the business card. On the road, unplugged, come what may. And it's this sense of loosening from patterns of thinking your life, thinking you know what your future is going to be. I know when I went through, in the parable of David, through high school, I just looked even back at those yearbook pictures in high school and in college, and I kind of have a glazed look on the face, kind of a bewildered, glazed look, like I don't know what's coming, but it was like a look at my face, like nothing really that I was seeing on planet Earth was really appealing. It's why I think a lot of times with teenagers there can be this sense of like a low-grade depression or an anxiety around the future of thinking, oh my gosh, what a daunting task going into adulthood.
Yeah.
Some of us had some nice moments in childhood, I think of playing by the creek and unstructured time and sparkly summer days where we just go out and lose track of time and space and just be so absorbed in the play that it was really idyllic. It was just wonderful. And then I'm looking ahead to think, so now I'm supposed to become a productive adult. Is there anything out there that looks attractive? No. And then my mother was at the same school where I was, so she knew the guidance counselors and send him out on all these field trips and adventures, find something. But no, there was nothing that could be found. And then when I got into university, the search just continued. You take all the aptitude tests and they tell you your skills, your abilities. Oh, I think you're better over in this direction, that direction. No, not appealing. And yeah, it took me 10 years of university full-time before I think I must have had there must be another way moment. And I mean, I had lots and lots of skills accumulated after 10 years of university and doing quite well in university, but like it was like an emptiness, like no, I'm still not seeing anything flipping on the radar chart that is a sign of life. I mean, I'm looking at the whole gamut, and then I started to open up a little bit to like helping professions, feeling like there was something around altruism and something around helping, wanting to be truly helpful, but not really seeing anything really clear that was clearly lighting up as a way to be truly helpful. And then that's when in 1986, in pretty much a state of disillusionment with the world, that's when I started to get into humanistic psychology and transpersonal psychology, and then the Course dropped in with those as forerunners, and Carl Rogers and Renita Satir, lots of amazing thinkers and reflections of my mind that there was a pathway beyond this world, but it was totally transcendent. It really wasn't based in any of the thinking of the world or all the different disciplines that I had studied. I had studied so many. So everybody comes to that point in their own way.
Now, did you study also other spiritual things before the Course?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was part of, I hear a lot of stories about how people are kind of channeled in. We were just talking at breakfast this morning, and Karen was saying it was Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now. Started mentioning A Course in Miracles, read a quote here and there. Sounds pretty interesting, curious, or curiosity can arise. And then it was Disappearance, who was it?
Disappearance
of the Universe, you were saying, Peter. The people, I had my inroads. I think I came across Jerry Jampolsky's Love is Letting Go of Fear. Very small book with cute little caricatures in it. I was like, this is interesting. It kind of came to me in a number of different ways where I started to hear it. And then I was out in California when I actually came across the book itself out in La Jolla, very close to where Bill Thetford was and the Leckett's. But and Francis shared last night too about kind of getting into the Course and then teaching it more conceptually And then one retreat, when we had a 7-day retreat together, it was such a powerful 7 days that it just like opened up a whole new world. Almost like that song, A Whole New World, a new fantastic point of view. You know, it just starts to, you get a glimmer of, wait a minute, this just isn't some kind of a new theology. This is like a gateway, this is almost like a portal into a way of living, an actual living experience. And to me, that's what it's been. It was actually my heart lighting up and the swirl of joy and glee and energy that I felt in my heart, that I just said, wow, this is it, I've hit the mother lode. I don't know what I did or how I got here, but that gets you into this like, it's almost like a beam me up, Scotty. It's like a vortex of energy that just starts to pull you away from everything that you thought your life would be. It sends you off into a whole new trajectory, absolutely unimaginable trajectory. And that's, for me, that's absolutely essential in unlearning the world. I had to have something, it's like, show me, Lord, show the way. You've got to, you know, like, what was the one in the movie, Show Me the Money? I mean, show me the joy, show me the love, show me the spirit. I need to be drawn in, I need to be taken in by something that's so expansive and so transcendent. Then I can get my heart over to it. That was the thing, I was always like in a holding pattern. When I wasn't seeing anything that really totally sparkled for me, I couldn't throw myself into it, you know, whatever it was. And then I meet people too that, like with Francis, who was living what the world would call a very successful, good life. And then, I guess for you it took the same thing. It took an experience to start to send you off in another direction. And start to see, well, maybe this isn't so successful or so really what I truly want.
Yeah, it seems like material things have accumulated and built up, but it's just emptiness in it. And for me, you know, the Spirit apparently guided me to just first let go of some of the things I hold on to too tight as my security or something that's just I couldn't let go of. And those things, because I put my security in those things, I completely lose sight of what is truly the source of, you know, that sustain me. Like I couldn't see it. It's not that I'm not living in divine providence, or I just couldn't see it because I trust everything that I built up myself, and you know, everything in the world, the possessions and relationship and career. So it was a very, you know, it seems radical, but actually my experience was very gentle. Like the Spirit is saying, put those aside first, because your mind needs to be convinced of something completely different that you actually are blinded of right now. So you have to put those aside. And even like with everything, my relationship with money, with career, with all the people around me have been completely retranslated by the Spirit. I was just remembering last year when I was in Australia traveling with a friend. We were traveling and just the experience was so apparent and obvious to me that everywhere I went, I met my mother, my father, my sister. It was just so unbelievable, like the patterns that, you know, the way they took care of me and the way they asked me questions was just my mother there, but in a way that is not in the same body, or they weren't playing the roles with me, and yet I could recognize that's the Spirit was saying, you know, don't, you know, have a fixed relationship with a body. Relax all those roles and boxes in your mind and take what is given and really see, you know, there is experience that to really be convinced that what is given is my will. What is given is the best for me. And to, you know, even think that I want something else, I need to strive for something else, is really just to say that whatever is in front of you is not my will. And I have a separate will than this. And I know what they are, so I need to strive for that. But just to be able to relax the mind and accept what is right in front, eventually really leads to this experience to recognize, oh my God, this is my will, and everything that I have is what I want and is what I need, and there's nothing else. So just really open up even to the idea of relationship. Like, feels really strange to think that I have a relationship with a body, because that is really about behavior. Do you have a relationship with this person? It's saying, these two bodies behave in a certain way in this box? And that is like, I don't really quite know how to relate to that question, because experience-wise, I am constantly in relationship, but the body shifts. Like with my mother, the kind of relationship I used to have with her now is with anyone. Like, I can have a momentary feeling of recognition. And yet with that particular body of my mother, I don't necessarily have the same way that we interact with each other. It could be more, we can talk about metaphysical ideas, and we could talk about something else, but not a mother-daughter kind of conversation and dialogue. But when I went out and travel, someone could just look after me and feed me the way that she used to do. And I just see like the relationship is completely not with a single body. It's just a momentary experience. And then when people really ask questions about a relationship, sometimes I will think, maybe that's the question is about whether the body behaves in this way, whether that fits into the box. And then I will direct my answer. But in my own experience, it's just a continuous experience. Like with David, for example, it's just this deep collaboration and mind together, and we just feel the inspiration to speak together and to talk, and that's just a very deep experience. And I can't really fit that into a box, depending, it just feels like everything, all the boxes and the definitions just been washed, and there's one vast experience that's ongoing.
Yeah, and you start to feel more and more as you go into it that the collaboration is really with the Holy Spirit. That when you give yourself over to the Spirit to be used, you are going to have a loosening from all attachments to form. I think of the Beyond All Idols section of Course in Miracles. It's back towards the back of the text, but there's a line in it, God knows not form. That's a one sentence, great one-liner, but metaphysically, if God knows not form, and I want to know God, you can see where it's going. God knows not form. If I'm going to give myself over to God and go for complete alignment with God, I'm going to move back towards abstraction. And I talked about that last night, that love, light, the kingdom of heaven, God, they're all purely abstract. There's nothing on earth that even is a hint of abstraction. Everything is very specific and concrete as part of linear perception. And then when you get into this unified perception, it feels much more expansive. You don't feel, you're not looking at form the same way.
Because I was just going to, you just explained it. I was just going to say, well, what about the script is written then? They keep talking about if the script is written and you need to be in relationship with these one or two people, or in your case, maybe many. Does that fit on the different level? Are we talking about different levels now?
Well, when people have asked me about the script is written, which is a line from the workbook, the main emphasis is on the last word written, which is past tense.
Right.
It's really, the script is written is just another version of lesson number 7. I see only the past.
Okay.
So, in other words, nothing to figure out about that because it's a linear construct and it's just saying it's the past.
Okay.
And imagine if you could free your mind from saying, gee, I don't really have to work on the script anymore. Imagine,
I don't have to write the script.
I don't have to write the script.
I just got to live it. I just go sort of walk through it.
Yeah, well, that's where I'm going to take it with. Here we are, we're right into unlearning the world. And I mentioned in Beyond All Idols area, it was God knows not form. There's another great line in there. He says, your will is universal and cannot be content with form of any kind. Wow. your will is universal. He's talking about the will of God. He's talking about Christ's will and the will of God. Your will is universal and cannot be content with form of any kind. Then there's another line that I like from that section. When you decide upon the form of what you want, you lose the understanding of its purpose. When you decide upon the form of what you want, you lose the understanding of its purpose. Like an eclipse, like if this is content, or we'll say this hand is love, and you get all mesmerized by the form, and it's like an eclipse where the form comes before the content. And this book has a lot to do with form and content. I'll tell you, you'll see the topic come up again and again and again. Love is content, and form is the distraction away from that content. So when you decide upon the form of what you want, you lose the understanding of its purpose.
So you're blinded then.
You're blinded. And to the extent that you open yourself to forgiveness and say, Lord, teach me how to forgive illusions, the form will fade and fade and fade away until all questions about form will just evaporate in the mind. You will see that, why would I give my mind over to such tiny, petty little nothingness, of all these questions? All the questions around form in this world seem to be the most important. When people say, well, come on, now be practical with me. What's the bottom line? How much money, how much return do I get on my investment? And, where is it going? Is she going to marry me or not?
I'm going to have to pay for some med work.
Yeah, exactly. It just goes, everything is so focused, riveted on the form, and the content is obscured. For example, we have a great sharing. We're here with you now, sharing. I get back on the plane, I go back. Then I fly to Mexico to collaborate with another friend of mine, Maria Felipe. So I'm going down there to collaborate. Then I fly back. Then I fly to Brazil to collaborate with another friend of mine, Armel. Then I fly back from Brazil, and then I have a festival, and there's a woman flying in from Europe who's just like happy as a little child, just very gleeful, Lisa Cairns, and she's flying in. So it's just collaborate, and then after that I go back to Mexico, collaborate with a whole group of people, and then I take off for about almost 2 months, 2.5 months. And Francis is part of it, but there's also Jason, Kirsten, Michael, configurations. The Spirit's using all the forms, almost like playmates, little playmates that are coming in just as part of these configurations. It could be 1, it could be 2, 3, 4. It's really, the form is irrelevant. It's the glee factor, it's the joy, it's the love, it's the happiness that's really the content. And the form is just given. It's almost like you could think of the form as almost like the props that will work. Like I've traveled in 31 countries and I speak to all these cultures and people that I don't speak their language. And the Spirit sends me the most magnificent translators, where we are so connected, so telepathic. It doesn't matter their age either. One time I was in Switzerland and they were having the most difficult time finding me a translator. They didn't know what they were going to do, and a French translator. And they finally found this 20-year-old student who was in a translation school, I think in Paris. And they pulled her out. They said, could you go translate for this guy over in Geneva and everything? And she comes and she's sitting next to me, and I happen to have a French translation of A Course in Miracles in front of me. So she's got maybe half an hour to prepare before she knows nothing of the Course in Miracles, nothing about metaphysics and everything. She's a 20-year-old translating student, and she's going to be translating for the Holy Spirit for a couple of days. And she's just so wide-eyed and willing. I give her the book. She opens it up and she starts glancing through it. And she comes to this word and she said, she came upon the word atonement, which probably is the most important idea in A Course in Miracles. The sole function of the miracle worker and the teacher of God is to accept the atonement for himself. It's that important. It's the only function really that we have. And she finds the word. And she goes, because in the French translation, they still have put a word that is not really a very good word for atonement. And because it still has some aspects of like paying a price. It still has, she's 20 years old, she's not even a course student, she's picking up that there's still some sacrificial tones in whatever word that they've chosen that's made it all the way through in the French translation. So she's looking at me and she's explaining to me that this does not seem to be the right word. And she says, I said, well, what is the word that you're feeling? She said, correction. And I said, yes, you're my translator. This is sent from the Holy Spirit, you know. And that's what I've noticed, that I have all these great collaborations with translators. It wouldn't be the same without the translation. You know, it's a collaborative effort. Miracles are a collaborative venture. Jesus says that in the Course. And imagine just being open in your life to feel like, wow, that's the case. So I just want to be open to the adventure of it and the collaboration of it. And I want to welcome everyone who's sent, because no one is sent by mistake. It's a very huge function that we have for giving the world, and no one is sent by mistake. Even us, we're down here, and this book is 20 years in the making. That's right, it only took 20 years to finish this book. It took about a year and a half or 2 years to start to bring it together. But what is different, what makes this book any different from most books? Well, with major publishers who want to make money on things, you'll notice that about things in the world, that everything through the ego is a commodity to make a profit on. And what makes this strikingly different is this book is actually just a website that has been on the internet for free for years and years and years. This is just a different form of the same content. Jesus said something that really struck me in the Bible. He said, freely you have received, now freely give. Freely give. So with books like this, I mean, everything that comes out in terms of books that has anything to do with me is already available for free. People just have to go search for it. But it's already been made available free. It's not kept apart to be sold for a profit, to be sold, you know, to make money or anything. That motive is not in it. It's totally just, this website is called Teacher of Teachers, because it's a tribute to the Holy Spirit. And on the web it's called Teacher of Teachers. Here it's called, oh my gosh, it's a book. You can put it in your hands. It's unwind your mind back to God. So it's the motive, it's the purpose underneath that's very, very, very important. And that's something that's been important to me. It's like everything that I receive that is always for me, for freedom, I want to give it away, I want to extend it. And I just have given different ways to do it, and this is one, it's kind of fun, it's like a novel, it's just a different form of the very same thing.
The title is brings you right into it. I mean, just the word unwind, it's very alluring to me, very seductive.
Okay, the Holy Spirit's doing His job. I've heard that comment a number of times, actually. A number of people have said that, yeah. Yeah, it's good.
Beautiful time. Thank you, Holy Spirit.
You know, we keep saying, I thought it was funny, given what we're learning about time, that we keep saying it took 20 years, you know, and this book is the culmination. So I'm thinking of it as that book on that table created the last 20 years. Here, right? You know, instead of, it took 20 years to write it, that book created the last 20 years of comments on the website.
Yeah,
it's the same thing.
You just take all the causation out of everything and then you can really have fun. And it's also like of all places, we're kind of premiering it right here because Karen was like, "Oh, come back, come back." We were here a while ago. I don't know how long it was when Francis and I were.
May 10th you were here.
No, we're just talking about when Francis was.
Francis
Oh,
was-
Francis, April
Yeah.
of
Yeah,
2013. Yeah, April 2013.
April 2013.
Yeah.
And now then we're back here again with the Quantum Love Tour,
Mhm.
kind of doing it through a quantum perspective, and now this. So, yeah, it's an invitation. Really, this is like an invitation. It's like I always like that about what the belief do we know. It's Fred Allen Wolf with the hair. At the
Yeah.
very end, saying, "Don't just take my word for it. Find out for yourself." That we're in an adventure of discovery of our Christ self, of pulling back all the parameters, all the limitations, every limiting belief. There's one little blurb on here that is interesting in the middle of the book here. It says, "Message from the Holy Spirit," right there in the kind of lavender words, right in the middle in the back. And it says, "I will work with your beliefs, guiding you step by step as you unwind your mind from the many false concepts you believe, keep you safe, and make you happy. Only the release from these false beliefs will bring you true happiness and lasting peace." And that's got that unwind word in it that came to me from the Holy Spirit. It was like a very clear directive to me that I would be undergoing seemingly an unwinding process, and the length of that process really is not determined by anything in the world. It's really our willingness, our readiness and our willingness, to be unwound. And it has nothing to do with anything else. We don't have any benefits from wealth or things, appearances in the world. There's nothing that gives us an advantage.
But you can't get away from this book if you're a searcher, because you got the title in the front, and then you've got your picture that draws you in the back, because you could see the Holy Spirit over you on that. Just the joy. I see the joy of the Holy Spirit in your face there.
I was
So
just
it's
thinking
really,
the same thing.
really beautiful. It's really, I'm not trying to choose you up or anything.
It's working for you. The front cover and the back cover.
I don't really I'm sure what's in it, but the front and the back
I will tell our publishing team. They'll
be thrilled.
But just remember, she's the one that pulled the fire alarm, so she can see the timing, so
Yeah, we were talking about, I read ahead, I like looking up topics in the book and reading ahead. I like the way you laid out each of the sections with topics. And somewhere in there, I believe you talk about how in the Course it's quoted that all we need is a little willingness. But then you mentioned that somewhere in the Manual for Teachers, something about we're stepping up our willingness. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, that's where he mentions great willingness. He talks about little willingness all the way through the Course,
And then the
it takes
Manual.
great willingness to see that all events, outcomes, circumstances are helpful. I mean, that's coming back more to the Bible. All things work together for them who love the Lord. In the Course it says all things work together for good. There are no exceptions except in the ego's judgment. An amazing unified perspective which has to be simultaneous, to be true, or even to resonate. Because from the linear perspective it just seems like there's victims and victimizers, there's good fortune, there's bad fortune, there's good outcomes and there's bad outcomes. It's not seen that all those seeming outcomes along the timeline are just interpretations and judgments. For example, a stock market crash. Whether it's way back in the big crash, way back in after the 20s, the end of the 20s, or even more recently, with the recent recession was at around 2008 or whatever. It's from the ego's perspective, these are crisis times. This is in a world of bigger, better, faster, more, in a world where everything is supposed to grow. Even churches are supposed to grow. If you have a church that's flatlines or like this, it's like you are not working for the Lord. The Lord does not make a shrinking church. Oh, really? I mean, I had a friend out in, some of you might have heard of Hugh Prather. He was a, Hugh and Gail, he passed away, I think, but he and his wife formed out in, I think it was Mexico, maybe it was Arizona, the Disposable Church. They formed the Disposable Church. And I'm like, isn't that wonderful? That knowing from the beginning that whatever is a building or an organization or anything of this world, of course it's temporary and of course it's disposable. And in fact, it would have to dispose of itself as soon as you realize that you are the living church, that your mind, that your essence, that your presence, that your spirit is the church. It has nothing to do with buildings. It has nothing to do with congregations. It has nothing to do with attendance. Tithing 10% of your income, my gosh, is that the best we can do? My gosh, we are the givers of life as the Christ. We are created in the likeness and image of God. We are life itself, eternal life. And so the best that we could be as a church would be as a reflection of that eternal life. So over the years, the first kind of symbol I got when I had a friend of mine said, you're going to be traveling all over the world and you're going to be going more places than you'll ever know, but you need a nonprofit foundation to help funnel some of the money. You can't, it's going to hold you back money unless you find a way to just let it be used in a nonprofit way. So I said, okay, then go ahead and do it. So he went ahead and he came to me for a name, and the name that I received was Foundation for the Awakening Mind, because that's what's happening. This mind is fallen asleep. In the Bible it says Adam fell asleep, and there's no place in the Bible where it says Adam woke up. I would say Jesus Christ appearing as the resurrected Adam, basically the way, the truth, and the life. That's one with God. I mean, that to me that's the wake up right there. It just doesn't say Jesus was Adam awake, but I can kind of read between the lines saying, oh, here's a witness of mind awake. So I titled it The Foundation for the Awakening Mind back in 1999, and then that foundation is still going today, and it's still extending beautifully with websites and all kinds of different things. And then when we got the guidance to do a church, and it was like, oh my gosh, I can't tell you the different people around the world that wrote in and said, please, David, don't go down that road. Oh my God. Basically, like when Jesus came, they said nothing good can come from Nazareth. When we were guided to do a church, people said nothing good has ever come from a church. Everything rotten has come from churches. But we were guided, and then soon a name came in, and eventually it evolved to become known as Living Miracles. We were just talking recently, we like that combination of words, the symbols we've been given, Living Miracles. And then it became pretty much a global ministry. And it seemed to grow and grow and grow, and at times shrink and do whatever things do. But we've never really been concerned about the form of it, because it's the content, it's the love and the forgiveness that we need to experience to reach that love and to experience that love. That's the most important thing. So it's kind of fun. It's every day we really don't have an idea. We don't really have any ambition for the world. We don't have goals. We don't ever have meetings where we sit down and go, okay, what are our goals for this year? The goal would be to let go of the concept of a year, to believe there is a year. Okay, we need to forgive the concept of a year. You see how different it is from how the world seems to operate, which is always bigger, better, faster, more. How can we grow? How can we expand? How can we, we're just not interested in that. It's state of mind is really what is our full focus and attention. To be in the kingdom of heaven is merely to put your full focus, your full attention on it.
thought you were going to say to be or not to be.
Starts quoting Shakespeare. Huh? Yeah. To be divested in the form. To be in the glee, the joy of the moment.
Yeah, what I'm doing, David, is also that I cannot sell it to, in Holland, or my family. I cannot sell what I'm doing. If you know what I mean.
Yes,
you know?
right. They aren't buying.
No, there's nothing that I can show, you know?
Yeah.
And what I can show is, oh yeah, they have their own interpretation of it. So that's difficult. And that's sometimes it is my, sometimes, a lot of times it is just my struggle. Really my struggle, how to find peace in what I believe in. I've seen it. I mean, I cannot refuse that. I've seen it. I know that I want to go this way. And then the other side is so terrible difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's that you've clearly been called by God. And when Jesus says, I'm calling you out of the world, he's basically saying, I'm calling you out of the belief that you are in the past. The past is over and gone. And the way that we experience that the past is over is we need new witnesses, And just you coming over to America, just all the witnesses that you've had since you've been here, these are like witnesses coming, your mighty companions coming, and marrying Jane Marie. It's like, it's a new life. You've told me that too. It's like, I don't just want to marry another woman. I wouldn't have given up everything that I gave up just to go marry another woman. That would not be enough. It has to be a part of a much bigger plan. It has to be a much bigger extension where basically, let's just bring it back to the mind, that the mind is just now onto a new purpose. It's going away from the ego's purpose of hatred, and it's coming to a new purpose. And you are simply calling forth witnesses. And once I started to see that for myself, I was like, okay then, I don't ever have to be like Lot's wife in the Bible and turn back and turn into a pillar of salt, which is pretty graphic. I remember when I first watched that on the big screen, and you're a little kid and you see all the people around, don't look back, and then she does it, She turns back and then there's this block of salt, this pillar of salt looks like a woman, and that was just really striking about how whenever we look back to the past, we try to make any sense of anything from the past, we can't. I've had to just let go myself and just let the witnesses keep coming in. I was doing a movie gathering at the monastery a while back, and I got this piece of mail, and I opened it up, and it was an email, it was an actual email, and I looked around and I said, this is amazing, and I said, I started to read it to everyone there. So I'm gathered with all these deep spiritual friends that I've lived and worked with all these years, and the email is going, you need to find a new set of mighty companions, and I read it to all my existing mighty companions, because this is the email. I just take everything that comes in, it's like, you need to find a new set of mighty companions. What it was saying is, it was talking about breatharianism. It was talking about, why do we even need to eat at all? And it was like literally a call into the mystic. And she continued to write, oh my gosh, and write and send boxes and so on and so forth. But the initial symbol was, it was just, I saw it as a beautiful just symbol of opening to transcendence, to complete transcendence. We can't stay fixed, we can't stay locked into anything. We can't take anything and make it comfortable and familiar and say, oh, this is that. We can't look back and we can't sing that old song, those were the days, my friends, we thought they never.
Yeah, that's true. I don't want to look back anymore.
We can't have any sentimentality, and even with the way we see the landscape now, we can't just assume and project a future based on the way we're seeing the landscape now. That would be just trying to use the past to make project another future. And the Course is saying, don't do that, you know.
Now, I was thinking about that too, you know, like the Israel was going from Egypt, and when they're in the desert, they look back to Egypt. Oh, it was better in Egypt, you know.
It's that old habitual comparison, you know.
So that's and I'm for sure that's not what I want. I'm longing so. I'm longing so to live the life with God, just to discover more and more what I have seen. I've clearly seen things, and I'm longing so for it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't want to look back. No,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, I join you in that. That's
Yeah, you wrote me that. You have no idea. Maybe you have an idea. You have no idea how encouraged me that when you wrote me, I'm with you all the way.
yeah.
Man, that was really.
That's it.
Thank you.
I feel that about everyone I meet. I feel like we are lifelong companions. It's like we, the earth and all of its heaviness and gravity is the ego. And we are strapped in with our booster rockets, and we are packing a bunch of extra rockets because we are taken off from this gravity. We are breaking the gravitational field. I always thought of that one time. I always used to remember growing up watching those big Saturn V, those Apollo missions with the big 3 stages and all that fuel in this tiny little capsule. And I was like, that's me. I'm strapped in, and they've got Apollo rockets have got like 3 big compartments. I've got like 5, 10. I don't know. I've got extra.
Yeah.
People that you have way more fuel than you need. Nah, just in case. I'm going beyond gravity. I'm going beyond the weight, the heaviness, the judgments of this world that tell us we're just human beings, that tell us nobody's perfect. No body is perfect, but Christ is perfect, and Christ is our identity. So why should we hold on to limiting thoughts? You know, I love that line in the Course in Miracles. I think it's in the teacher's manual, where Jesus says, God's teachers are not perfect, or they would not be here. And so they come to teach perfection over and over and over. 3 times Jesus uses the word over and over and over, until they have learned it. Learned what? Perfection. Wow! Now that's a goal I can go for. No wonder I could never be in high school and college, you know. What color is your parachute? I don't know. How high can you go? Can you go, the sky's the limit? Well, I don't even like that. The sky is the limit. I can do better than that. No, Jesus is telling me to teach perfection over and over and over until I've learned it. And I said, all right, now that's something I can go for. The rest I was ready to just sit on the sidelines and say, not yet. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to put my heart into it unless it's truly fulfilling, unless it's truly reachable, unless it's inevitable. You know, unless it's the will of God. Why would I put my energy in it? So that's what was beautiful, and that's why it's fun when a book like this comes out, because all this is just the same as the website. It's just an expression of let thine eye be single. Really, really go for it. And then nowadays we have what are called like the crystal children, and they're called by many different names, but they're showing up more and more in my awareness. They don't seem to have that baggage like most of us have all seem to come with. You know, we seem to come with an awful lot of baggage, like a big load of it. And these crystal children, they're showing up, and you can feel it in them. They just have a look about them. They have a way about them. They're just symbols of transcendence. Some of you, the last time I was here, I think we watched the movie Tron, right? Over at Andy's house.
Yeah.
We watched Tron, and Jason and I and Nikita were there. We were doing all these metaphysical interpretations of Tron, and you remember in that movie that the ISOs were discovered inside, and they were, you know, just destroyed. They were wiped out. But then the one ISO remained, and she was very important, and she was part of the escape from that captive electronic world. And I feel like we're just in a time right now where it's very exciting because these beings are showing up. They're just ourself. They're just reflections of ourself, but without all the baggage. And they're symbols of inspiration that way. So for our community, I think we're just going to see more and more of these ISOs showing up, just because they're showing up right on time, right on cue, just heralding the awakening.
Well, what's the difference in the crystal children? You've heard about indigo children?
Indigo? Yeah, same thing.
Same thing?
I think of them in the same way, yeah.
Yeah.
That you'll ever go through is transfer training. It's just taking the miracle and spreading the miracle out. Spreading the blanket of peace over the whole world, your whole perception, without exception. You remember probably when Oprah Winfrey was in the heyday of her show on regular commercial television, she started doing those gratitude journals, and how they caught fire. People were like, it was fun to think of people tuning in from all over the country, all over the world, getting into doing gratitude journals. But that's really what transfer of training in A Course in Miracles is about. It's like really making an opening in your heart so that the gratitude can just burst through, where you just feel this gratitude for God. And to the ego, this last step in awakening is the most frightening, because the ego is afraid of love. The ego doesn't know what love is. It's an imposter self that was made to block out love and try to do it so thoroughly and so fully that you would never even have a hope of experiencing that kind of deep love again. There's a forgotten song passage in A Course in Miracles where Jesus says, if you remembered this song of love, the song of gratitude that you have with your Creator, and all those that are there with you, meaning everyone, you would weep. You would actually start weeping, because the love and the gratitude would be so overwhelming you couldn't hold back your tears. And some of us have had little moments of that where we just had so much love that we were just going to burst. Really for no earthly reason. We couldn't even come up with a reason to feel so much love and gratitude. And to me, when we were just talking about coming in to talk about transfer of training, it was like Francis was saying, yeah, it's really a gratitude for our life, the way we live. It's no small thing to wake up in the morning when you don't have fear, and you don't have fear of any consequences. There's nothing you're afraid of happening throughout the day. You wake up and it's like you've got a fresh opportunity to shine and share all this love and this gratitude with whoever comes your way, with however the day goes. Even if you're stranded in an airport for 14 hours. You don't really care, like, circumstances of what's going to come, because you're not really into focusing on the circumstances anymore. You're not trying to make something happen in the world. You're not even trying to make the world a better place. I mean, it's such a state of mind that you've actually gone beyond the idea of thinking that you can improve something in the world. And that's why before you come to the stage of transfer training, it seems like if you can just do a little part to help a little bit, a little place, a little bit of a change, that seems significant. But once you get into transfer training, it's like a whole new world is opening up before you. It's like you're coming around the corner and a giant vista that you weren't even aware was there. You come around, almost like when you come around a mountain and then there's a gigantic vista that you can just see for so far. It's like, it reminds me of that, Barbra Streisand did that beautiful song, "On a clear day, rise and look around you, and you'll see who you are." On a clear day, how it will astound you that the glow of your being outshines every star. You know, it's like, wow, the glow of your being outshines every star. You'll feel part of every mountain, sea, and shore. You can hear from far and near a world you've never heard before. And on that clear day, you can see forever and ever and ever and ever more. It's like a Broadway. Yeah. That's what transfer of training is about. That's what make no exception. It's like the ego's like, oh no, it's all over. It's really over. So that's part of what we want to talk about. It's not so much, transfer of training, we can talk a bit about the mechanics, but that's pretty simple. The mechanics are not making exceptions to the miracle. Miracles are natural, Jesus says. When they do not occur, something has gone wrong. So it's only still thinking there's something unnatural about a miracle and trying to hold on, keep something hidden, something protected, something out of view. The mechanics are just don't make any exceptions. But really what we want to share with you today is just the inspiration around the experience that you'll have as your life as a miracle worker. Because you're actually in alignment with God, doing your Holy Spirit given function, and that was the only way to happiness. That was the only way to experience true happiness, not through these little scraps of things that the ego offers, because that never brings any lasting happiness. But there's a workbook lesson that says, my happiness and my function are one. It's really saying when we're in our function, that is our happiness. It's not circumstance dependent. You won't even care how it looks. You won't even give a thought to it. But just opening up and sharing a bit of our life, how our life is on a daily basis.
Like when David talked about with no exception, and that is, for example, when we say that we accept what is given, and that does not have exception. We just really accept what is coming our way with a lot of joy. One example I can think of is when we open our center in Mexico. We have some funds to have the daily operations, and so we wanted to open a bank account, and we looked for someone to help us open a bank account. And this financial advisor said, "Okay, open a bank account. Every time you deposit money, you pay tax." We said, "Okay, you pay tax." And then I gave him my passport, and he said, "You're Australian. You don't pay tax because we have no treaty between Mexico and Australia. We only have it between the United States. So we don't pay tax." "Okay, we don't pay tax." I was like, celebrate both. Pay, okay. Don't pay, okay. And he said, extra money probably is good not to leave it in an account. We can invest it. Okay, we invested. And then he said, "How much do you invest?" And David and I look at, how much do we have? We invest all of it. And he said, no, half. Okay, half. Just like he's basically telling us exactly what to do. And we're like, yeah, half. And then a few days later he said, "You got 70% return." We said, "Oh, okay, 70% return." It was like there is no preference, good or bad. Pay tax, yay! Don't pay tax, yay! Invest, yay! Don't invest that much, okay! It's like this, just very much accept everything when the mind has washed away all the, judgment of different scenarios and the foreseeing outcome. Then everything is equally acceptable. When everything is equally acceptable, there is no preference. Everything comes our way is for celebration, and for our, use as a backdrop for us to celebrate and express this joy and this inspiration that wants to come out. So that's just like a little example. We just don't direct or control the flow of our life, but more just ride with the waves and enjoy that.
So when you go to a restaurant, how do you use that?
The last restaurant we went to, we got smoothies. Yeah, we do. It actually is becoming harder and harder to consume and digest solid foods. Me, I don't know about where you are. She was saying, well, that looks like breatharians are our next step. Not that we ever started out. I mean, I could just see that at the beginning. If I told my mother, my dad, my grandmother, I'm going to be a breatharian. Oh gosh, they'd have locked me up from the get-go. But it's actually just from being so just joyful and tuned in that all the appetites go away. Because they're all part of the ego's getting mechanism. They're all based on lack. It's always, we think we need something in the world. We need, I mean, the world would say you at least need to have some stimulation. If you didn't have stimulation, you'd have a boring life. Not so. Actually, you get so content so in alignment with spirit that actually you could have like a day in the Dallas airport. There wasn't exactly anything going on. It was more fun listening when we landed. And I was like, well, we watched Netflix, and we had, what was it, George Carlin on there, and they were telling us all the things.
Stephen Wright.
So I said, well, because they were going to pick us up at the airport. And what was it, around
6 hours prior.
6 hours prior.
6 or 7.
So they were doing all kinds of things, but you actually don't really have a need for stimulation anymore. So it gets very simple that way. It's just like a beautiful, like a hum of stillness and joy in your heart, and you're not looking for distractions, and you could sit and watch the grass grow and have a ball. Before you might have to be at a rock concert or watching a sporting event or doing something where there was some
and then
kind
the ego is never satisfied either, so even if you ate something, you're looking for the next thing.
Yeah, it's always with the ego. It's always
Yeah.
what's next.
Yeah.
Even in the shows, coming up next, and new and improved and like with this Mexico thing, it's fun. Every time we've gone to a different country or culture, we just have no clue of what the form will be. We really don't know the best outcome. I mean, I think that's one thing with the Course and practicing the Course is you lose such a sense of judgment that you don't know what's coming, and you get really into that. Like there's a part in the early workbook lessons where Jesus says, in no circumstance, in no situation do you know your own best interest. He doesn't say in most, or in 80% of situations. He says in no situation. So that's humbling. That's offensive to the ego. That's absolutely offensive. It's like, come on. The ego has no contribution to make to the truth, or even to the approach of truth. The ego has absolutely zero, nada, nothing, no contribution. And then when you get in that state, like she was mentioning, when we actually went down there, everything we've ever done in any country, including the United States, in terms of shining and sharing, like it was back in 1999 that my friend Thomas got guided to do a 501c non-profit, and then there was a church guided. When we got down to Mexico, it was kind of like going to Pluto or something. You don't speak the language, and the government, everything is very different, and they're kind of known around the world for different things, like drug cartels and sometimes beheading people. Some of the movies that come out, it's like the justice of handling things with the young people and so on and so forth, and different people telling us all these things. It's been absolutely sparkling and miraculous. Amazing simplicity, amazing friendliness. Like it's just like droves and droves and droves of simple, friendly people that are really humble and devoted to spirit. We drive down the street, and basically you can look into the homes, and you look into these really simple. It reminded me a bit of pictures I've seen of India. almost like the slums and the ghettos of India. And you can actually look in and you see rooms in there where there's maybe a table and a chair and nothing else, no furniture, and then you'll see people in there and the dogs and the cats and they're just, sometimes you walk down the street and people are just laughing to themselves or singing, music going just amazing, just music, music, music. Sometimes you can walk downtown in this little town and every 15 feet you hear another music sound going because there's somebody playing on the street. Then you go another 15, another one, and another one. Music is not a part of their culture. It's like it's woven into their culture. It's a musical culture. They're singing. And then there's this thing of, like when we first tried to just think, well, let's just open a bank account. I went into this one bank and it just was like something was broken. And it was all shut down, and another one I tried. It's like my prayer had always been, make it obvious, Holy Spirit. I'll be like water rolling down the mountain. If I come to a boulder or a rock, just help me roll around it. There was just no, and then we started talking to people, and they kind of started pointing us towards this one place. We talked to 2 or 3 people, and that's the way it goes. The signs and symbols are real strong. We kind of go over there. And I've been saying for years the saying from the Bible, render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and unto God that which is God's. I've just said it for years and years. We go in, and our financial manager is Caesar. I had to laugh. I thought, that's who the Holy Spirit. It's just divine comedy and humor. That's who, if we're having to start something up, we get funneled over to Caesar. That's how it's pronounced down there. And this guy is so happy that we could just sit there and meditate in his office watching him. He's just like really bursting happy. He's just so happy and so willing and so attentive to help us. And just like Francis was saying, he's an example of no control over the world. It does say that in the Course, that you have no control over the world you made. It's kind of like where the 12 steps, the serenity prayer is leading to the same place, just this place of total trust and no control over the world. Because we go in there, we have a wonderful time every time we go in there, and he helps us out with so many things, and yet he's supposed to be the financial advisor that we're hiring, and he tells us everything. He will give us questions, almost like rhetorical questions, so we can, how much do you want to invest? We say a number, he goes, no. and he then tells us how much we'll invest. What do you want to invest in? This. No. You both go, yeah, that sounds, okay, that sounds pretty good. No. His favorite word, with the biggest smile on his face, is no. Cesar just saying it. But then he goes and he tells us. We hire him and he tells us everything. We don't have any input whatsoever. And then she comes back and I say, how's it doing there? And she's like, well, for the year we have 70% return. 70%, you go into a bank over here, you get
0.07%.
Yeah, 0.07. And of the 70, okay, Cesar. But see, that's, we meet people, angel, angel, Cesar, there's different ones. Jesus. We have Jesus is down there. I had Jesus as a driver. One of the people that's most involved with getting our mystical mind training program translated into Espanol is Jesus. He's like really in it. And his whole family is involved too. We just enjoy the signs and the symbols, but it's like it's all just like it's happening without any kind of control. Almost like it's just part of a prearranged plan. The script is written, and you show up and you got a front row box seat to watch the show. But you don't control any of it. And it's just unfolded magnificently there, but I have to say what happened in Mexico is really unlike anything else that we've done in any other part of the world. But the quality of it is we're just beholding. We have learned to be passers-by. We have learned not to try to control anything. John brought up that part Friday night about, doesn't the Course say never correct a brother? An amazing thing when you think about it. Never correct a brother, because he is the Christ. And that's that feeling that you get when you're in the beholding of, you're just grateful to watch things happen. Because there's really, there is no crisis. We can't ever say that there's a crisis that arises. It's just opportunities to extend is all it is. And you don't have crisis. It's so different from the old way of living and waking up and trying to do. I think most of life as a human being is kind of, you're on the defensive, you've got the shields up, protections up, and you're trying to be safe, you're trying to be sound, you're trying to avoid conflict and get pretty good at trying to avoid conflict, but that's really no way to live. That's really not living at all, in a defensive posture. So that's what's so beautiful about it, I think, for us. Even when it's time to close something down, it's just so obvious.
Yeah, it is so obvious. Like we had a center in Spain where Peter was part of at the early stage, and then the center just thrived because there were a lot of people in Europe who really want to live in this kind of devotional life and live with friends who are all devoted to practice the Course. So when I was there, we had this house that can accommodate 12 people, and the whole time I was there was not one more people who applied or less. Like it was completely full, but not the 12 at the whole time. People come and going all the time, but there was like this divine flow. We never have to turn anyone down saying, the house is completely full for this week. We always somehow have an opening in that very week when someone applies. So it's just like quick coming, quick goes, but there's someone who are there more longer term. But just watch the divine flow of, the Spirit never really give you more than needed as well. We didn't have a house that can accommodate 25. And just the 12 people who were so devoted there, and then carried on for maybe about a year, just short for a year, and then you started to see the signs and symbols that the house started to empty out. And that is a very clear sign that the center's purpose has been maximized for that period of time. And there is no decision that made by us to open it or close it. It was just like, okay, we watch, we know we don't want to make any effort to make things happen, keep things going, because there's no judgment of good and bad, how we want things to be. So we watch the symbols. Okay, people stopped applying and the rent started to go up or something. So everything points to the direction that the center's purpose has maximized. And that's the point we close it down. It's just, that's how everything goes.
It's very much like, it's all so obvious that there's no hesitation, there's no doubt, there's no struggle. And I think what's happening too is, just like if we use science for a moment, like in science, most of us were raised in science classes that taught us Newtonian physics. We just didn't grow up with quantum physics, and quantum physics has overturned everything in Newtonian. Everything. Not 90% of it or 99% of it. It's brand new. And now you might say that not only perceiving in a quantum way, but thinking in a quantum way is all that we've been talking about here, because it takes away all the cause-effect relationships that we believe are part of linear time. And all of the institutions, the institution of marriage, when you get into mysticism, everything goes. The institutions of churches, of families, all the institutions are all linear. They're all part of our linear belief system, which the ego invented as a substitute for God's love. So it's fun now because we're actually seeing quantum movies come out. A movie came out within the past year or so called Mr. Nobody, And it was such a quantum movie that the first time I saw it, I just smiled and I thought, okay, that is not like any other movie that I've ever seen. I mean, not remotely like any other movie. This is a quantum movie. Now we've got quantum movies coming out, and it was so unlike any other movie that I remember seeing it in Los Angeles with some friends late at night and kind of staying open for like 3/4 of the movie, and then it was very, very late. And then I saw it again, and I saw it in Hawaii and this and that. And finally, the Holy Spirit started giving me like these major downloads, like, here's what it means. So I started to get like huge downloads describing exactly what was going on with this movie. And finally, the time came to actually do a movie gathering with Mr. Nobody. And I think the movie itself was like 2 hours and 33 minutes. And so with all the commentary that came ripping through me, I don't know how the final recordings were up around
It is 3.5.
3.5 hours that made it out onto the internet. But it was fascinating because it's almost like you could take a look at a span of potential, what we might call in linear terms, like lifetimes. Like if you, from a reincarnational perspective, if you could get back and start to see your patterns in we'll say your last maybe 3 lifetimes, you would start to see similarities, not in the forms, but in the patterns, these egoic patterns playing out. Almost like astrology sometimes gives you a snapshot, with amazing accuracy into what seems to be going on in your life from a much deeper perspective. That's absolutely fascinating because you can see that the mind that's asleep is still trying to get something from form, it's still trying to play something out in some way to find some love in the form, to get the right configurations. It's trying to keep changing the configurations.
Combination.
Yeah. It's great in Mr. Nobody because there's this little boy that's walking down the street and he's walking by this park bench, and there's 3 little girls that are sitting on the park bench, and they all kind of look at him very adoringly. And then as he goes out in the movie scenario, he plays out a lifetime, an entire lifetime with each one of these girls. So he's got these 3 relationships, and you can see that even the playing out of those, it's still trying to resolve something. Like some of us have played out the rescuer, where we end up in a codependent relationship and we'll do anything to rescue the partner. That's the one I think he plays out with one of them. I can't remember all their names, and then there's one that's really in love with another, like the unrequited love of loving somebody who's in love with somebody else. That gets played out, and then there's this one that he has this deep love for, that aren't able through circumstances to be together, and this keeps happening through the movie. And at one point they kind of bring in the butterfly effect, where these two have not seen each other because their parents kind of moved away for many, many years. They come and they reunite now that they're adults. They can't even believe that they've found each other, and they're together for this short time, and she just says, this is all happening so fast, I just need a little space, I need just a little space. And so he says, okay, and so she writes down her phone number on this piece of paper and gives it to him. And some of you saw Serendipity, where the phone number gets passed and it all gets spun out like that. Well, this time he takes it and he's looking at it and everything, and then there's a man over in a tribe somewhere in Africa who's boiling a kettle of water, and the steam comes up, and it's the whole butterfly effect that basically comes across over to wherever city they are in the United States. And you can see from the clouds, you are the drop that's coming, a drop of moisture, and you go all the way down as a drop onto the paper with the phone number, the only link that these two have together, and you see the and the ink just splash. It's just sublimely the intricacy of everything, of how 2 lives seemingly that have been kept apart, this little drop does the job. It's all these kind of things that basically kind of show how, and they really bring in quantum physics, and they bring in that by the end of the movie that time actually goes backwards instead of forward, which is what the Course talks about, and you have to see it. You just have to see it sometime with commentary. It's just amazing. But to see these quantum movies, these are like reminders of our life now, where we're not trying to get any meaning from those institutions, from those constructs that have been so heavily ingrained. You start to see that there is no meaning to be found in anything that the ego made up. You start to actually have a joyful feeling underneath lesson number 128, the world I see holds nothing that I want. That, to the ego, that's a very sacrificial workbook lesson. The world I see holds nothing that I want. But you actually experientially kind of get underneath it, and you feel the vibrancy of how it would be to live your life in this state of no expectations and really fully living in the moment, just fully taking in whatever the moment has to offer, welcoming anything that comes, blessing anything that goes, grateful for it to be just so obvious, so there's not any kind of figuring out to do with it, just very, very obvious. That's the way, that's the simplification we're talking about. That's the simplification of miracles. They actually simplify your life, so you don't feel like you personally are making any decisions about anything. It's the height of guidance, of staying in the flow of guidance, so that everything is given, obviously. And it really comes down to that word you used at the very beginning about living in an involuntary way. You see that miracles are involuntary. That there's no aspect of trying to make something happen or avoid something. There's no sense of trying to push something. There's no sense of trying to speed something up. Jesus says, patience is natural to those who trust. No outcome already seen or yet to come can cause them fear. It's just absolute acceptance, total acceptance.
So are you living above the battleground in a sense?
Yeah.
Whereas you have said in the past about the script is written, is that kind of a lower level of consciousness? Is that kind of how I was talking about?
Well, the script is written is still, again, the script is a linear metaphor.
Right.
So when you get into quantum, then even the linear metaphors, that goes away too. So it's, you might say, beyond the script is written, it's the sense of the simultaneity, that everything is happening
In the flow.
in the flow, in the moment, and it's very involuntary. There's not a sense of having to do something. I read that quote at the very beginning, and it kind of applies to what we're talking about now. Can you imagine what it means to have no cares, no worries, no anxieties, but merely to be perfectly calm and quiet all the time? Yet that is what time is for, to learn just that and nothing more. Wow, to learn just that and nothing more. That's why we like movies like Being There with Sean C. Gardner, Peter Sellers' movie. We watched that several weeks ago, and some people had not seen it, and they were just like sitting there with a big smile on their face, because it's kind of like a charmed life.
Yeah.
And clueless. It's almost like if you put clueless and charmed together. It gives a very interesting combination. And right. Clueless and charmed
Together.
leads to a harmless life. And in that sense, you really do feel that way. Like there's a sense of harmlessness. Like there is nothing that involves harm at all. It's a transcendent feeling. There is nothing that involves harm. And it's not like you're disengaged, but it's more like you're fully linked and engaged in the spirit. And in that sense, you feel fully connected to everything and everyone. It's not like you feel aloof or heart, you feel totally in, like you're really in, like you're totally in. There's a line in A Course in Miracles in the workbook. Most of us think about the world as existing before we came to the world. You know, even from a reincarnation perspective, the world's there, and then you incarnate. Like, oh, that little, like they have a movie, like you're just a little soul up there, and you're just, okay, let's try that blue planet over there, and you incarnate. No, actually, Jesus says in the Course, in the workbook, when you came to this world, when you came, you brought the world with you. And so I've used it more of like a little flying soul who's got a little backpack on. And the soul carries this backpack, and then when the soul comes, the soul reaches back and pulls out the whole cosmos out of the little backpack. That's more quantum. Now that's quantum thinking.
Yeah.
When you think of yourself as like a flying soul, and you pull out of your backpack, boom, all of time and space, the entire cosmos, all the galaxies and everything, the quasars, black holes, they're all in there. You brought the world with you. So what you're perceiving, even looking around this room and saying, oh, look, these are my fellow inhabitants on planet Earth in this room and everything, this is like a momentary, you've pulled it out of that backpack and you've made it look this way. So this is just a reflection of your beliefs. And then it's tempting to think that there's actually, outside of these walls, is actually a city called Jacksonville. That's just a concept. You know, that's part of the backpack thing. And then there's a country called America, and North America, and then there's a planet, and then there's the solar system, and then there's other galaxies. It's all just kind of pulled out of, it's projected out of the mind, as if you could separate from God. And this is what the as if looks like. And you get to the point where you don't really need to think linearly anymore. You know, like that line in Solaris, we don't have to think like that anymore. It's a new way of thinking. It's like going from Newtonian physics into quantum physics. It's just, there's a whole new set of assumptions, and it's kind of surprising. When quantum physics was discovered 6 or 7, probably about 7 decades ago, the scientists, you know, when you get into the atomic level and Max Planck and then Einstein coming along and this, but the quantum physicists that discovered it were embarrassed to tell their colleagues about what they discovered. You can imagine in a Newtonian world, and you discover something that overthrows everything that ever came before. And Isaac Newton is basically known as the father of science. And when you come into quantum, you see that it transcends and overthrows everything. That basically Newtonian was just describing what seemed to be the objective empirical world and how it works. And then you get down into particles and subatomic particles, and you see that all the rules up there don't apply down there. And that these other smaller parts are much more basic than that. You know, inside the buildings, we might say there's bricks. Well, when you get down to the brick level and you go even smaller than that, you start to realize, you discover things about how the world works and how things are, and it's mostly empty. You know, it's like a big figment of imagination. No wonder it's called Maya in some Eastern traditions. No wonder it's called an illusion by Jesus. It's basically a lot of space. A lot of nothing. Much ado about nothing. It's a lot of nothingness. But it's taken on appearances that are really playing out these beliefs in the mind. And until these beliefs are cleared away, then, you know, you might say it's like the blinders are on. And Jesus says each one peoples his world. The ego peoples the world. Imagine all the characters that you've had in your entire lifetime have just been peopled. That sounds like a verb. He's turned the word people into a verb. Peopled. You imagine your mind has peopled the planet.
So it's basically a giant holodeck we're each creating for ourselves.
Yeah, and the characters are acting out one belief. The belief that the past is not over. And that the guilt of the past is still here. And each one is showing up, not as a whole, but just as something that was given away, something that could be acted out. Like you could say the ego passed out all the parts, but nobody is speaking from the whole. Everyone's just speaking from the part that they were given. They're acting out some form of lack. They're acting out some form of need. And that's why the only way to have a holy relationship is to go within and find that within yourself that has no need or lack. And be that within yourself that has no need or lack. And then to see everyone from that perspective of no need and lack. That's what holy relationship is. It's not two people and suddenly, oh, I love you, I've always loved you, not some kind of romantic version of it all, where they both go, at last I found you, my soulmate, or whatever, It's not like that at all. It's that when you have looked inside and found no lack within yourself, within your own consciousness, within your own awareness, then you're in holy relationship with everything and everyone. Because you're back in alignment with the Holy Spirit. And so that's much bigger. It's much more quantum than this Newtonian idea of finding a soulmate. And then at the end of the fairy tale, and they lived happily ever after. Ha ha ha. Yeah, we've tried that one out. How many people have found a personal happily ever after? It just isn't there. It was Newtonian, and of course it's not there because it's not real. It never had a validity.
If you carry that soul with a backpack, if you carry it out, and you say he decides to come in and creates the world, on his way out, wouldn't he collapse the world, put it back in the back, and it's gone? So why do you have life insurance, and why do you worry about leaving a legacy, and why do you worry about what your children and your wife and all these people are going to do? Because when you're gone, they're gone. If you're no longer there to project them, then they're not there.
Yeah, it's similar to Mr. Nobody. He's the last living human being.
Yeah, I remember
he's
that.
like 118 years old,
Yeah.
and the quantum physicists, and they talked about how the universe seems to be expanding and it'll reach a place of equilibrium and then it'll start imploding. And it kind of plays that out too, into the sense of things that seem to be going forward. Everybody just assumed life moves forward, but then after that point, everything moves backwards. And it's a big laugh. He just starts laughing and laughing and laughing as he gets into the reversal, that everything starts to move backwards. That's pretty much how the movie ends with that. But just using what you're saying, of course, first of all, this belief that there's an afterlife. Afterlife, what does that even mean? If life is eternal, there is no before or after. And then you start getting into this quantum perspective to think, well, everything I'm perceiving is just a subjective perception of what I believe. And there's nothing else. There's nothing before it, and there's nothing after it. You don't have to worry about an afterlife or a fiery hell, or you don't have to worry about making it home to the pearly gates and the angels and everything. You just start to see that everything is subjective. Which basically, once you start to have that discovery, you see that there is no objective world apart from your mind. So you're just perceiving what you believe. You're perceiving what you think. And then it starts to become much more obvious that you have to change your thought system if you want to be happy. Because what you're perceiving is guilt personified. It's this acting out. It's seeing, trying to project and see something as not you. That's the whole trick. That's what projection's all about. The ego says, don't keep that. Get rid of it, dump it. And doesn't tell the mind that by projecting it, that's how you keep it. By seeing something as not yourself, you keep it. So if you see guilt, it's not you. Like, oh, you're guilty and I'm not. Then you keep the guilt.
Like the guy cops were putting in handcuffs. I was projecting guilt out. There.
Someone's getting locked up.
Someone's getting
Well,
locked up.
That's because you had that bag of weed under your seat and you thought you were next.
David, I'm trying to understand this, like, when you say you create, you bring all the people into your world, Thanks for coming, everybody.
Well, you brought us here.
But did you dream me up or did I dream you up? Like especially like if you're friends or in a relationship with people, who brought who into, I don't quite get that whole thing.
There's only one.
Yeah, there's only one
I know
mind.
there's only one,
Right.
but we're still interact, all right, so there's nobody bringing anybody anywhere.
Well, you might say that as long as there's the personal perspective, then that's where questions like, did I dream you, or did
Right.
you dream me, come up. But the perspective of healing is coming back into what we could call awareness of dreaming. So that's, and they call it lucid dreaming. When the more you come closer to lucidity, to lucid dreaming, which is really just that you're dreaming a dream, and also you're aware of the content. The content is really has no significance. So you're dreaming a dream, and the content of the dream has no significance whatsoever. It gets very peaceful at that point because you can't be harmed.
Right.
You're the dreamer of the dream, and there's no dark content or bright content either. You start to see it's a dream. It's a fabrication and everything, and things get very, very peaceful and very relaxed that way. Also, there's nothing to figure out. You're not trying to figure out motives. Like that's one of the biggest tricky devices is trying to figure out other dream figures' motives when you gave them everything. The ego wrote the script. The ego gave all the meaning. I have given everything I see, all the meaning it has for me. That's lesson number 2. So whatever they're saying, whatever they're doing, that's been an attempt to give it away. Like it's not me, it's you, and the blame and all that starts there. But in the end, you start to realize that can't be either, and that's where the forgiveness comes in.
I still like this particular dream.
It's subjective, some people, I've said no two people see the same world because there is no objective world. It's just that there are elements in the dream. We said this wall is kind of like a yellowish wall, or if we start to describe things and we could nod our heads and start to agreement, that's what makes it seem more than a dream. That's what makes it seem to have an objective reality, when there seems to be people that can agree on certain colors and sights and sounds and smells and everything. That's part of the mesmerism. That actually gives it more of a realistic feeling.
Oh, okay.
And yet, the deeper you go into with spirit, you start to realize that it's entirely subjective. That all the meaning that it seemed to have is what you gave to it. There's a movie, Solaris, where some of the characters, they go closer to this planet where all this light is, and then they start to have memories from their past come up, maybe of a sibling, and George Clooney plays a psychologist who goes up to help on a rescue mission up there in Solaris, and we soon discover that he had a wife, Rhea, who committed suicide. And we just see him going up there as an astronaut, as a psychologist to help out. But his unconscious mind, he still is grieving his wife, Rhea, that he loves and who committed suicide. So he goes to bed the first night, and he's sleeping. But in Solaris, it's like the cause and effect, or the as you sow, so shall you reap. For humans down here, when somebody dies or commits suicide, they're gone. But up in Solaris, just with him thinking about her, she comes back. And he's horrified, actually, because it's breaking his box of dead and gone. And then he sends her away again, which is like a projection again. He sends her out into space because he's so horrified. She comes back again, and then he's attracted to her. And he's got to resolve all of his issues with Rhea that remained unresolved. She's just a character. And she even speaks the words. She says, like, she's not whole. Like, she's got these memories, but they're not hers. It's almost like implying that she's just kind of acting out these things. that are still unresolved, in the mind. And that's really the same for all of us. We should really appreciate everything that we're experiencing because it's giving us great mirroring. We're getting mirroring 24/7 of everything that we believe, and it's helping us become more aware of what's unconscious. It's actually the best way of starting to see that to bring the unconscious up into awareness is just pay attention toward your reactions and your responses in daily life. Or when people dream at night, when they get into all this dream analogy and what this color means, and you don't have to analyze dreams, it's just even before you go to sleep tonight, just tell yourself consciously, okay, Spirit, be with me and help me pay attention to my emotional reactions. Because you can tell a lot from your emotional reactions, even in dreams, whether they're nighttime dreams or daytime dreams. It's what we talked about earlier, that you're not really reacting to what's happening. You're reacting to your interpretation of what's happening. And you can change that interpretation. You can have it cleansed, purified, washed away of all the judgments and grievances. And that's how you come back to peace of mind. It's through that change of the interpretation. So it's giving us a whole new perspective on the world. It's very exciting. I mean, this to me has been the greatest adventure of having your whole perception retranslated. And people could say, what's it going to be like? I mean, everyone's frightened about where it's heading, but that's part of why we're here. It's wonderful, to wake up without fear. It's wonderful to be guided through the day in such an easy way. It's like an easy thing. Things just seem to come to you. Things seem to unfold. There's not this figuring out mechanism. There's not this analysis mechanism. There's not this comparison mechanism. Things come very gently, very easily.
Less work.
Yeah, it's very, I want to emphasize easy and no work. It's like you're on vacation all the time. Because miracles have that vibrancy that we seek for when we go away to a vacation. Some people would go to a vacation to escape the daily work grind, to escape their daily routines, to escape monotony, to escape a bland, boring life, go to an exotic vacation. Imagine if the tables got turned, that in this miraculous way of perceiving, you want to jump out of bed in the morning because you've got so many holy encounters, so many amazing things that are going to be unfolding for the day, so that you actually are ready to go forward with it. You're looking forward in that sense to the day, not really forward, but in your heart, there's almost an anticipation of joy extending and radiating through you. So that's more than anything else. That's what I want to convey. Is that's the purpose behind the transfer of training. It's not like some kind of mechanism. Like, okay, what's next? Like that's how it felt with the world. Like, okay, part one. Okay, learn the foundation. When I was in university, that's the way it was with textbooks. Okay. All right. I mean, there was one class, you were talking about the osmosis thing. I actually, when I was in university, I just really did not like to read. So I thought, I wonder if I can make it through university without reading. And then you go to class and they go, here's the required reading. And then you gotta go and this is how they make their money, books. Because it's like this huge reading list. And so sometimes I would actually go so far as buying the books, but then I would just be looking at the books thinking, oh, that's not fun at all.
I'm somebody else reader.
I've been in kindergarten and
I
made it to college level and they want you to read. I mean, if you were a bookworm and you really enjoyed it, it'd be one thing, but then... So I remember one class, I was in College of Design, Art, and Architecture and Planning, And I went to one class, and they gave the required reading. And one of the books in the required reading for the class was Robert Pirsig's Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I went to another class. Required reading was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Then I went to a third class,
Wow.
and the required reading was Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Now you would think that me, someone who does not enjoy reading, would rejoice that there was one book that was required for 3 different classes, but I didn't read it. Even for 3 classes required, I said, I'm not reading that book. And so 5 years later, after I had left university, I got the book, and then it was time. And it was really, spiritually, I was ready to really be impacted by Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It was like taking me in to this whole thing, it was taking me into spirituality. But I couldn't really appreciate it until I was ready. And I hear stories about the Course in Miracles, because I go all over the world in these 31 countries, and I hear it, all the different cultures, all these different stories about how they hear about it, maybe through another book or something, and then they talk about how it works its way into their home. And then when it's in their home, sometimes it sits there for days or weeks or months or years even. A plant stand, doorstop, I get to hear all the stories because they're stories of readiness. Like it's very, very deep, and they're not quite ready for it in their dream world. But they do want it, but they don't. So it makes it into their house. And then it makes it, sometimes it will come off of a bookshelf and hit them in the head. You hear the stories of how it just, when they're ready, they're ready. And there's amazing stories about that. But the Course is just like a dream symbol. There's nothing special about this book or the Course or anything. It's more just the readiness of the mind to learn the curriculum. This course, this is a required course. It's interesting that it says that in there. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Free will does not mean you can establish the curriculum. It's a beautiful introduction, and the more you get into that, the more you see like, wow, if I'm really ready to open up, I don't even have to figure out how I'm going to open up. All I have to do is want to open up, and everything else will be taken care of. He even says that in the Manual for Teachers, that you cannot even decide the form of the curriculum. And that totally contradicts the ego. Because the ego thinks, well listen, I can decide whether to read this book or not, and I can decide whether to study the Course or not. But that's all part of a prearranged plan too. That you can't even decide the form of the curriculum. Only the time you take it is voluntary. Meaning, if you are really ready to wake up, if you really have a desire and a passion for waking up from this dream world, everything and everyone is going to be used by the Spirit to orchestrate that awakening, which is inevitable. So you don't even, it's not a matter of whether you will wake up or not, or all these comparisons about time, how long will it take me, and all this. All of that, is not under control. But the motivation for it, that's what I always loved about meeting people. The ones that the Holy Spirit sent me, were such inspirational witnesses that it didn't take me long where I went, oh, I'm in. I started traveling around with Ken and Gloria Wapnick and Robert Perry, and just out on travel, starting to meet. Just one whole tour was a tour of meet the people who have dedicated their life to this pathway. That was a fun tour, just to go and meet them. And then the same man came along, and he kind of was looking at me with a kind of a skeptical look during the gathering I was doing. But it was an all-day gathering, and as the day went on, I just watched his face get softer and lighter, and his heart just opened up, and he went from like being a heckler in the morning, like stand-up comedians have like a heckler, all the way through, he got softer and softer. Then he went home during the break and he brought his whole family. And he went from the heckler to bringing the whole family.
Cheerleader.
And then at the very end, it was late at night, he said, "Where are you off to?" And I said, "Some city in Michigan or whatever." And he said, "Can I come to the gas station with you? I want to fill your car with a tank of gas." So it went full circle. That's what I love watching. From the heckler symbol to bring the whole family to, can I fill your car with a tank of gas? Very intimate little time we had there where he, in the gas station, you know, where he was just full of love and gratitude. And I find that that's it. When we hold the light in our heart and we really stay clear and strong in our purpose, then the characters do light up. And Peter and I have talked about that, because when Peter left Europe, you know, he left his wife, he left his family, and they were more fundamentalist Christians, and already the signs were there, because he was like, look at what Jesus is saying in the Bible, you know, and they would be like, no, he doesn't mean that, Peter. Like, he was having these new insights bursting and these new awarenesses that were coming up into him, but again, you know, the ego made the world in hate, and now it's being retranslated into love, but we have to kind of take our hands off the steering wheel. It's the Holy Spirit and Jesus' job to bring us in, our witnesses. And for me, it started slow at the beginning too. It started like a trickle, you know, you had a trickle coming, and I was thrilled with the trickle. Like, oh my God, there is a way, there is a way. And then the trickle turned more and stronger to like a flood, like a tsunami of love. Because I got to go to all these cultures and meet all these people in all these different countries. And just, we hug each other, we rejoice, there's joy, there's laughter. If I had a little camera, I could make a great montage. It would probably take weeks and weeks and weeks to show the montage, but of all these loving faces and all these hugs and in all these cultures and all these different languages, everyone's going through this awakening process, and it's very strong. But I need to just be willing, you know, to just, okay, send me wherever you want me to go, and I'm not going to have any goals in mind or any thought of how my life should go.